Welcome to Screen Less Play More podcast. I am Cynthia, the founder of ScreenLessPlayMore.com. And if you have a child who cannot pry themselves away from video games or social media, we are here today to tell you that it is not their fault and it is not your fault as a parent because these technologies are being designed to addict. Most of you have read The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which alerted us all to the really big problem going on in society with screens. But my guest today, Dr. Richard Freed, wrote a book that I think is just as important because it tells us exactly how big tech has designed the games and apps to be purposefully addictive. Richard Freed, PhD, is a psychologist, author of the recently released book, Better Than Real Life. His insights have been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and other media outlets. Dr. Freed has devoted his career to revealing how Silicon Valley is using its clandestine science of persuasive design to pull childhood away from the real world to exist on social media, video games, and online video. Welcome, Dr. Freed.
Cynthia, I'm so happy to be here.
Great.
Sounds like I so much appreciate what you got what the book is about. So thank you.
I will tell everyone I have pages and pages of notes because it was so good. I was highlighting basically the entire book, and I think it is the next book every parent needs to read so that they just understand what is going on and that not all screens are created equal, and there is definitely a puppet master behind all of this that is working against us. And we'll just talk about exactly how big tech is trying to addict us all and also why we can't trust some of the screen time recommendations that are given to us parents from supposedly trustworthy organizations. And we'll discuss some solutions. So what was it that made you want to write this book?
I am a psychologist in clinical practice, a child adolescent psychologist, and you can't miss it. Been in practice for more than 25 years, so I've watched the consumer technologies unfold. I've watched childhood be moved away more and more from the real world to screens, such that now by the time a kid is a teen, they're spending 8 hours and 39 minutes on a consumer technology every day, and you watch what that's happened. And you mentioned Jonathan Haidt's work in The Anxious Generation, and he has it right. He says, even if we make, let's say, Instagram or social media perfectly safe, that's not going to fix this because he understands it's the displacement. It's the pulling away from what we've known, the science of a real world childhood and putting kids on a screen. So no matter how supposedly great that screen is, kids are leaving behind family, school, the outdoors, and kids fall apart because of that. And it's abundantly clear if you're a psychologist in practice.
Yeah. Well, and then one thing I think that is so important for parents to understand is not all screens are created equal. It's not the same as TV that we were watching when we were kids. It's not even the same as the video games we were playing in the 90s. You say in the book, parents don't realize that the reason their kids are disappearing into the virtual world is not the fault of children or parents. Instead, it's the purposeful intention of an industry using hidden psychological manipulation. So when I was a kid, you'd watch Saturday morning cartoons, and yes, that was keeping me from doing other things, but after a couple of hours, it would end, and then it would be like a boring infomercial, and I would say, I don't want to watch this, and I'd turn it off, and I'd go do the rest of my life. And so now it's ubiquitous. It's keeping us away from other things, but especially it's trying to keep us on. So what is persuasive design, and who was BJ Fogg?
I am a psychologist in clinical practice. Essentially nobody knows about this. When I go talk to large groups of pediatricians or mental health care providers, and I'll say, like, who here knows about persuasive design? And not a single hand will go up. So parents should not feel, what have I missed?
Right.
This has purposefully been hidden, and it was hidden from me. Like, when I started peeling back layers of the onion, I'm like, oh my, wow. Because what got me started is somebody said, tell us how kids can develop the skills that they should be responsible for keeping away from screens. And that was 2018 or so. And I'm like, okay. And then I start doing this, and I discovered Dr. BJ Fogg down at Stanford, and I'm like, kids can't do this. This is going after their DNA. Like, we should not say, kids, this is your responsibility, kids and teens, just like we shouldn't sort of hand kids cartons of cigarettes and say it's your responsibility not to smoke. So Dr. B.J. Fogg is a psychologist who I believe is the key father of persuasive design, invented it, really brought it forward, or brought so much of it forward in the 90s at Stanford. And right after 2000s, here comes Facebook and the consumer tech industry and video game industry, and they are wanting to shift. Here's all these companies competing for our lives, and they want to take all of us and shift us onto a screen. And how are they going to do that? They are going to use this powerful hidden secret science that Fogg is bringing forward in the 90s. And as Fogg tells us, his tagline for his persuasive design department at Stanford, the Persuasive Technology Lab, is machines designed to change humans. And we're supposed to go the other way. We as humans are supposed to design machines that help us. And here, this is a science that's designing machines that change us.
So he taught a class, and it just so happened then that most or plenty of the kids that were in that class went on to work at Facebook, start Instagram, stuff like that, and really implement his ideas in their technologies and their apps.
Yes, he really hasn't gone and made venture capital money. His intention wasn't to, I'm going to invent this and I'm going to make venture capital money. I think he could have done that. That's something to be said that's positive for Fogg. But what he did, and I would like him to be more accountable for, is he handed this off. He said, this is how you're going to use this in the social media industry. And he handed this off to them, him and Nir Eyal, who wrote Hooked. There's a lot of conduits that are bringing this science forward into these giant, what are called UX departments within Silicon Valley, user experience. And some user experiences are really helpful for us. They design a website that's more easy to navigate, that for an adult, you're like, okay, it helped me buy that product. Go ahead and do that for adults. But when you take UX designers and you say, go after childhood and use their developmental vulnerabilities to pull kids away from the real world, to put them on a screen, and the consequence is obesity and health epidemics and depression, that's ethically wrong, and you can't do that.
So one of the things that a lot of these companies employ is the work of B.J. Skinner. And so what did he do, and what is a Skinner box?
Skinner is this preeminent, just a behavioral psychologist, and he's most well known for inventing these psychological conditioning chambers that he used for animals. And he really always told us that this always can be translated to humans. But Skinner invented, let's say you put a rat or a pigeon in a Skinner box, and it's a psychological conditioning chamber. A cue light goes on, and it tells the animal, you're supposed to go over there and peck that little lever to get some food. Today in psychology, that cue light has been replaced by a notification. Ping, go over there and check your digital reward. Who's liked your photo? Who's done whatever?
And part of it, right, is that it's intermittent. It's like the mouse or the rat or whatever goes over. Sometimes when they press the lever, they get food. Sometimes they don't. So it's let's just press it. It's a slot machine, right? The humans want to just keep pressing. Well, any animal, I guess, because sometimes you get a reward and sometimes you don't. And we had a psychologist tell us once, our son was constantly asking to watch a show, and sometimes we would say yes and sometimes we wouldn't, but he didn't know what the rules were when we would say yes and when we would say no. So he said, you have created a Skinner box. He is just going to pester you all the time because sometimes you give in, and he doesn't know if it's after 2 asks or 100 asks. And so that's, would you say basically, I mean, they've used this psychology not only in slot machines, but that's exactly what they're using on social media.
That's really insightful. And what you're talking about is that key element of motivation. We're going to put that on a slot machine schedule because the mammalian brain wants order. We need to figure out something. And if it's truly random, we will go at it and go at it and go at it, and people will lose their lives to a slot machine. They'll lose their house and their wife and their life because the human brain can never figure that out. If you just rewarded people every fifth time they pulled a lever, the human brain would walk away from that in about an hour. But if you put it on a truly random reward schedule, people will go at that. And you're right, you're going to bring that forward into YouTube or TikTok. A boring. Oh my gosh, that's so the best thing. Boring. Yay, that's amazing. Like it is a slot machine. It's a slot machine in video games. Like I'll not find something. I'll not find something. Yes, that is the most amazing thing I've ever. Essentially, that is one of the key elements of making consumer technologies better than real life, and hence the title of the book.
So they're combining, it's like the secret sauce is motivation, ability, and triggers. So how does big tech motivate us to use social media? Like they're going after pleasure and pain?
B equals MAT is the formula that Fogg came up, his behavior formula. And when you hear Fogg describe it, it targets our Stone Age brains. This modern age that we live in is but a blip. We were here for 4 million years as hunters and gatherers. And if in this land of scarcity and depravity, if you could get as much reward for as little effort as possible, as much food, as much procreation, you were going to win. So B equals MAT is that. Behavior equals motivation, ability, which is also known really better as simplicity. So we're going to give you lots and lots of digital motivation and fun and entertainment, and also threaten you with punishments like FOMO. But we're going to make that as easy to get as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're really programmed to be lazy, kind of, because
Correct.
it helps us out. It saves our energy. It saves our resources, so that we've got the energy to run away from the tiger. So it's like, oh, this is so easy. I just turn on my phone. And it's like you're saying in the book, it's targeting, like, we want pleasure, we don't want pain. So like Snapchat uses the snap streaks of like, how many days in a row have you been on Snapchat? And we're like, oh, well, I don't want to miss out. So it motivates people to get back onto their device, back onto Snapchat, because they don't want to miss out. And that's part of the motivation. And then you're saying ability is just because it's so easy.
You can roll over on your bed and maybe consume a half a calorie and click buttons for hours on end. And same with or other video games, you just push a button. And I just wanted to say, like, you hear Fogg when you were bringing up FOMO and Snapchat. Fogg will tell us, like, social connection it's in our DNA, but beyond human DNA into mammalian DNA. And he will tell us that, we're driven to have this social connection, but an even bigger driver of us is this fear of social rejection. Because for most of human history, if you were shunned from your tribe as a mammal or a human, it essentially would often mean certain death.
Yeah.
So
that really makes sense.
So when you're trying to pull a phone or social media away from, let's say, a girl, and you wonder why she cuts on herself, or you wonder why she says, I'm going to kill myself, or she ends up in a psychiatric hospital, that's because this product went at her DNA.
She wants to be a part of the tribe, and you're taking her away from her perceived tribe of friends that she has found online.
Correct.
Man. And then they also employ triggers, which just brings you back in, right? It's the email that you get from Facebook that says you haven't been on in a while, or what are some of the other triggers they use?
It's essentially always, just remember, M, A, and T have to happen at the same time.
Okay.
Fogg tells us that they're simultaneous. So it's always triggering you to go access those easy rewards. And that's a scary place for a modern day human to be, where self-control and drive and getting up out of our beds and not just sitting there and eating calorically dense, fatty, high sugar, salty foods that are just in the fridge all day or around the corner at the fast food place. Like those are dangerous things for modern day humans. But Silicon Valley knows that, and they're just going after that. So Silicon Valley wants to trigger you until you develop an internal trigger.
Okay.
Um,
So you're getting
like a
notifications at first, but eventually you don't even need to be notified. The second you're at a stoplight or you're bored in the line at the DMV, now you're trained to just go on your phone.
Yes, you're the cigarette smoker that just, why did I light up after a meal? I don't know. I
Got
just did
it.
it. And all this is Tristan Harris of the Center for Humane Technology appropriately describes it, and he was a leader at Google too, but the race to the bottom of the brainstem. Like these are impulses that we don't even know why we're doing. Ask a kid why they're living their lives on a video game, a phone, or social media, and they'll say, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and so they used to sell hardware from Silicon Valley, floppy disks, hard drives, but now they're, quote, selling their users. What does it mean to be selling users? And what is a persuasion profile?
Yeah, I talk about in the book how I grew up in Palo Alto, which is in the middle of Silicon Valley, in before the consumer tech industry came there, and that was Silicon Valley. We're going to make silicon chips, and that
Right.
was the town that I grew up in.
They actually had a physical product 40 years ago. But so, like, I've heard people say, if you can't figure out what the product is, it's you.
That is so correct. Yes, social media is quote unquote free. Exactly as you say, when you're using a free product, you are the product. So Silicon Valley has computers, like supercomputers that weigh thousands of tons, I believe, or hundreds of tons that take up an entire building. And so they've turned those loose, an AI, on us, and let's say a kid, and they anytime a kid clicks, hovers, does anything on social media, that's all cataloged forever.
So for me, like you're saying, so if I'm on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they're recording, oh, Cynthia liked this dress. Cynthia is interested in articles about screen time, et cetera, et cetera. And they've cataloged that. And then, so they're using that to figure out exactly which ads to show me. Is that how it works?
Ads and how to keep you on there for longer.
Oh, okay.
And
So they're figuring out like
and
what to show me next. Like the algorithm is like, oh, show her more stuff about this vacation that she looked up earlier today, or stuff like
it,
that.
it's beyond that. It's also how can we take Cynthia in the next year and pull you away from your kids and pull you away from walking outside to send you down rabbit holes that don't have you spend 5 more minutes today on it, but change your life. We're going to completely alter your life, and we're going to turn AI loose on you. And you're grown up and smart, and you have a lot more self-control. But okay, that's one thing. But to go after kids and teens with their profoundly vulnerable brains that are purposely designed to be plastic so they could be taught from people who care about them, to go after them is a different story.
And I mean, without any sort of research on this whatsoever, I'm just going to venture to say this is probably the most addictive thing that's ever been created, because alcohol hits a lot of people the same. Gambling probably hits people a lot the same. But this is so targeted to figure out exactly how, like, what is Cynthia going to be sucked in by the most? What is Richard going to get sucked in by the most? Because if I looked at your feed, I would probably be bored, and vice versa. But they've got it down to the minute little bit of exactly what we want to keep looking at, right? Like, it's so individualized.
And across platforms, like platforms share that persuasion profile. It's not just, you are user so-and-so, like we know you're on this platform and this platform, and all that's coalesced together.
Wow.
And Shoshana Zuboff appropriately calls it surveillance capitalism. We are always being followed, always being tracked. And that's a big problem. I'm focusing on the stealing of childhood. I'm focusing on and adolescence, like how those same techniques are used to take childhood away from family, away from school, the two most important emotional connections for children and teens, and to pull them and put them on a screen. And of course, they're going to get miserable and depressed, and boys are going to leave school behind, and they're going to fail to launch. And be living in parents' basements across the nation.
Because it's generality, but for the most part, it seems that girls tend to be drawn to social media because it's, it's going towards our Stone Age DNA of like women were raising the families, staying home so that they would be protected from danger. So they're very socially wired, but that the men are very wired to hunt and all that sort of stuff, etc. And you have this whole area in the book about video games that I thought was fascinating. And it seems that boys tend to be drawn to the video games because they are kind of playing upon those sort of Stone Age DNA type things where, it doesn't seem like it's a coincidence that these games like Fortnite, World of Warcraft, are actually, about creating a society, hunting, like gathering within the actual game. And I just wanted to kind of go through Fortnite specifically, which you go through in the book. Like for people that don't know, what's just like a quick summary of what Fortnite is about, if they've never played it or seen it.
It's a battle royale game. It's a free game. You and 99 other players are going to fight to the death.
Okay.
And it's going to be a last man standing game. And it's cartoonish avatars. There's a lot of violence. It's not like graphic. But the reason why it's so powerful is it's kind of it starts off with boys in elementary school. It's training them it's training a generation of boys starting in kindergarten or first grade and second to go seek their status and their self-worth and feel like they're fulfilling their job on this earth by way of their DNA by sitting sedentary in a back room or a basement to play that game.
So they would naturally want to seek competence. Thousands of years ago would be through hunting and all that stuff. And in this day and age, maybe they'd want to go out and run a race or play some football or wrestle with their friends or whatever. But how are they seeking competence in Fortnite?
Again, always just like think about like this little modern world that we live in is completely different from the 4 million years that we lived essentially all in the same environment all across the world. And that is, to be a boy, you needed to do two things, especially to be able to procreate or procreate with a higher status mate. Okay. And that is to hunt, fight, that's one thing, and to build shelter. What are the two things in Fortnite that you essentially gain points for, status for? Hunt, fight, and build shelter. And that game was built by the lead UX person is Dr. Celia Hoden. Like that is not a game. That is a machine that is designed to target your kid's DNA, to go down to their soul and make them feel like this is what I should be doing. And again, that B equals MAT, we're going to get tons of motivation for profoundly little effort. So you have a generation of boys growing into young men feeling they're sometimes happy. I'm so much achieving all this stuff. I haven't got a job. I kind of didn't do very well in school, or I failed out. I'm living in my parents' house. I have no prospects of kind of moving forward, but I sure feel like I'm competent. Mm-hmm. I sure feel like I'm with my tribe of boys to young men to whatever. To like, wow, look at what we're succeeding. Some boys or young men wake up to go, oh God, what have I done? Mm-hmm. Some boys just don't, and then it's hard to kind of redo school. But and then just to hear Dr. Hoden say who's this UX on Fortnite, like we're going to have you feel competence, and we're going to have all the the challenges that you face there, the ability, that is also known as simplicity, are by design. We're going to essentially make it like this Goldilocks world of easy rewards that you barely have to work for. It's not like real life. When you go outside, you skin a knee, you got to get back up. When you fail a test, you got to get up and do that again. You can't just quit.
And that's what I think is just so important that I want parents to know is like, you're not just sitting your kids down in front of, the Chipmunks or Smurfs or whatever it was we were watching, or even like Super Mario Brothers, that had an end. You would play a game, it would say game over. And I just want everybody to realize, like you're saying with Celia Hodent, they are figuring out how to psychologically get people to stay on these games as long as humanly possible. And one thing I also thought was fascinating is, how does Fortnite employ the motivation technique of the near miss phenomenon?
Yeah, so we have these hacks in our brain that can be exploited and can be found. And for all of human history, the near miss compelled humans forward. You're a hunter-gatherer, you're out. It's really hard to bring down a deer with a bow and arrow. Good luck to you. So your arrow bounces off the deer, and you're like, do you give up? No, that's a near miss. That like pushes
You're like,
that
I'm
hunter-gatherer.
so close, I can do it next time.
That near miss compelled humans forward to feed their tribe, to allow us to be successful today. Humans have almost died out before. We need stuff like that to compel us forward. So Vegas has found the near miss phenomenon to be able to hook us. Bar, I got it, cherry. Why does the husband come back at 6 a.m. and say, honey, I'm sorry, I lost 5K, 10K, because of the near miss,
I was so close. I was almost there.
Go to Vegas. What built these giant things? A lot of it's the near miss phenomenon. And then so Fortnite is this battle royale, you against 99 other players. The chances are you're going to die. You're not going to win that one little that game. So you're fighting. You think you're about to win, and then you get killed. And then what's remarkable is you see your health meter go to zero, but you can see the health meter of the person that killed you, and it looks like they were just about ready to die because you were fighting them. And you're like, I almost had them. I'm going to play again. And Fortnite takes like 20 minutes or so, but let's to play a game, we're going to play again and again and again. And you have elementary school and middle school and high school boys waking up, good night, mom, and they set their alarms to wake up at 3 a.m. To play until they wake up. Oh, good morning, Mom. Why are you always falling asleep in class? How come you can't keep your eyes open? We're going to take you to the medical doctor and run labs on you. God, you seem like you're okay. Yeah, you don't know that I'm living a completely secret life driven by Fortnite.
Well, you made an incredible point of this is pulling kids away from real life. And why would you possibly want to do homework? Why would you possibly want to go outside and kick a soccer ball when you have this amazing status in the game and you have your tribe and all you have to do is twiddle your thumbs and it's going straight for your brainstem? And so what are some of the destructive behaviors you've seen in your patients after they get into games like Fortnite?
I mean, Fortnite, like you see this happens to my patients, but this happens to the kids of my colleagues and friends. You will see formerly well-behaved, typically boys, and formerly well-behaved boys will they'll steal their parents' credit card when their mom's taking a shower, and they'll go spend the in-game currency. Like I've seen up to $1,500. And that just tears families apart because it doesn't just happen once. Okay, like we can't do that, and it happens again and again. And that's sort of the acute in the moment stuff. But if you and I decided to go visit a random college in the United States and once we got there, we counted men and women, we would count nearly 60% women and 40% men. Boys are walking away from academics. They're all throughout school. Girls are doing much better. Boys are walking away from productive lives, and they are spending more and more of their lives gaining quote unquote competence on video games. Girls are getting depressed. Boys are losing the ability to support families and be successful.
And what would be your advice? Is it change to less addictive screens? Is it get rid of these games altogether? Get rid of screens altogether? Like I actually was trained as a screenwriter, and yes, there's a formula to a screenplay, but it's got a beginning, a middle, an end. You're supposed to feel certain emotions at certain times, and then it's over. And these technologies today are meant to go on forever and ever and ever. So do you think it's better? Do we switch kids? Okay, don't do Fortnite anymore. You can watch a TV show or a movie, or what's your advice?
And just the other difference between a movie that has a screenplay, that's art. It does not have an experimental science in it and thousands of AI experts and neuroscience experts with a experimental science behind it, behind the screen, that are oftentimes monitoring kids in real time and making adjustments in real time to perfectly tune that instrument to pull that kid on the game and keep them there. You know, as I talk about in my book, this isn't fair. We need to understand the challenges that parents are up against. Years ago, the tobacco industry used to say this should all be on parents and this should all be on kids to protect themselves from our product that we're going to market to kids. Like, the world woke up to say parents and kids can't stand up to this. And I believe that's what we need to do. You see governments like Australia push back the age when kids get social media to 16. We see China not allowing kids to play. You can't play a video game if you're a kid in China except for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday between 8 and 9 p.m. Like, I'm not saying we need to do that, but they understood as a country, this is destroying a generation of kids' lives. So this can't be on families. And then I get annoyed, disturbed, troubled when I hear what I call the tech elite, who are in the top 0.01% of income, saying you just do this, this, and this, and I protected my kids. Meanwhile, I sent them to a private school that was $60K a year that limited their screens. I have 10 nannies, and the nanny that we do have is getting paid $100K a year to sit there and play games with my kid. And now I believe with the power of persuasive design increasing, even those ultra tech elite are not going to be able to protect their kids. But that being said, what can parents do? One of the key things I believe is, and Jonathan Haidt believes and others, is to push back the age when kids get digital mobile devices, smartphones, iPads, so forth. All screens, as you say, are not created equal. Have your kids watch an educational program as they get older. Have your kids watch a movie that's done. So yeah, all screens are not TV shows. Things that don't have persuasive design in them are what kids appropriately should use for entertainment.
And I get it. Like, I absolutely handed an iPad to my son when he was 2 years old. My husband works on weekends, and I had a new baby, and I would be nursing my new baby. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do if I'm home alone and I've got a 2-year-old? He won't stay in one room. He's going to walk downstairs and do God knows what while I am sitting here nursing, and I can't walk around the house with my baby. And so I figured out real fast, wow, he'll sit in one spot if I give him the iPad and he's playing some sort of game on it. But I guess then the message is, if you absolutely feel like you have to hand your kid an iPad for some reason, then a show is probably a much, much better idea than a game or something that they're touching and getting really sucked into. So,
you know, one of the key things is we need to help families understand that there is a science behind this.
Yeah. I think from my experience, I would say if I could do it over again, I wouldn't have done any screens whatsoever until like 5 or something like that, except for the occasional show or movie or something like that. Because I've had to sort of reel it back once I learned what was going on. It's like, oh, yikes, we're not going to have that game in our house. But I get it. Every once in a while, you're in a situation where you can't just say, go play. But in that case, please, I want everybody to stay away from these ones that are intentionally designed to addict. And I think to your point, it's not going to be enough. We're going to have to ask our government. We're going to have to ask our regulators. We're going to have to put pressure on these companies because it's just going to get even worse with AI. And I think you're right that it can't be on parents only.
Exactly. Schools will say, oh, what's my responsibility? It's all on parents. That doesn't work. When I was going to school, there were smoking sections at my high school.
Oh, funny.
I'm older. So kids would get started on smoking and then die of lung cancer because they got started on smoking at school. Like somebody woke up to realize, no, that's ludicrous. We don't do that. We don't hurt kids' health. Schools have two big responsibilities: to teach our kids and to keep them safe. Smartphones undermine that, both of those. If you want your kids to learn better, no smartphones whatsoever. They also put kids at risk to get cyberbullied, because those things always get filmed now, or typically get filmed. They get posted, and kids kill themselves because not less perhaps because they got bullied in the moment, which is tragic, but more because that bullying is going to be posted for the entire community, for them to see, for the world to see, and they're going to be ridiculed, and they can't face it, and they kill themselves. Why in God's name would we send that tool, quote unquote tool, to school?
Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to move on a little bit to a chapter you had about supernormal stimuli. And, the best way to understand this is fast food, that they've figured out, we all need fat, sugar, salt. That's what we're looking for millennia to keep us alive. So they've figured out, okay, let's give this supernormal hit of all these wonderful, tasting, delicious things in our junk food that's going to keep you hooked. And then this, games and social media have figured out supernormal stimuli to attract our brains. And one of the biggest concepts to understand how they do this is dopamine. So what is dopamine, and what does it do to our brains?
Well, I just want to give a shout out to Nicholas Tinbergen, who won the Nobel Prize for figuring out what supernormal stimuli are, which are man-made, jacked up, hyped up, not real experiences that target our DNA, and then they trigger dopamine. So that's what dopamine does. You just stare at drug addicts on the street. Why in God's name do you do that? Why do you, or why does an alcoholic, or a gambling addict or a video game addict give up on life? They are stuck on that dopamine, which is a reward-based neurotransmitter, neurochemical that's involved in us going after rewards. It made us chase food. It made us chase procreation. And we have to be really careful with the activities that give us dopamine today. Tons of fast food, tons of I don't want to use drugs because I know how powerful those are. Okay, use it once. That was great. That was amazing. Now I'm going to do it again, but I'm finding I need to use more because as you say, the brain resets itself. There's this down regulation of the dopamine system in our brains that says you should not be experiencing this much dopamine when you use cocaine or video games. We're going to down regulate you. Your dopamine receptors are going to pair off. And so you're going to start to feel less joy when you play video games, but you need to keep playing them and more to feel okay. But in all of that, real life things that just give us the typical real life trickles amount of dopamine, hanging out with our family, enjoying a show with them, going for a walk with them, no longer create any joy whatsoever. So I'm going to leave that behind.
In regular life, we're supposed to, correct me if I'm wrong, we're supposed to get small amounts of dopamine when, let's say, we meet somebody that we think is fun or funny or attractive. We're having a fun conversation with our friends. We're taking a jog and feeling like we accomplished something. We get a little bit of dopamine, and then it keeps us wanting that dopamine so that we do things like go for a jog. We do things like hang out with our friends. But the video games and the social media are giving us just insane amounts that are unnatural, right? And then when we're not doing those supernatural things, just going for a jog and talking with my friends seems so boring.
Exactly. And that's what, when I go talk to large school groups of parents or something, and teachers and educators at school, I turn to the audience and I say, what is the one word that big time video gamers use to describe school? And everybody knows it, and they'll just go boring. Because they just hear it, and that's dopamine at work. Wow. And as you say, flooded with dopamine, but that is also second by second. Bam, you look at a video game and you're just being inundated with that. And a typical semester in high school is 3 months. Mm-hmm. You have to work your bottom off to make a grade at the end of the semester. You just literally, like one of the smartest kids that I've ever worked with, understood persuasive design, genius level IQ. Probably I never measured it, but you could just hear him potentially talk circles around me. But like, you just heard him say, like, I understand persuasive design. I understand the tricks. I can't walk away from video games. He could have been valedictorian probably,
Hmm.
but he essentially failed out of school. Like,
Wow.
I can't bring myself to do the
Hmm.
work. He's about the only kid that I've ever heard have that insight in my practice, but it was just tragic for him to have that insight, but still know he was going to fail and know he couldn't change it.
So I get that like this can't be all on the parents, but what it sounds to me like is, now that we know what this is doing to kids and that it's so orchestrated, like you've got to take the games away, right? Like your kid can't regulate themselves. They can't just do 20 minutes a day. They can't just do 2 hours a day. So if you want them to not ruin their lives, I mean, we kind of have to throw the Xbox away, right? I mean,
Jonathan Haidt and others talk about pushing back the age when kids get smartphones. I do that, and I also suggest families follow the few families that I have in my practice that do this, or a lot of Silicon Valley parents. We're going to have a no gaming home because I mean, so many parents tell me we understand this. We're going to give them the Xbox. We've got it under control. Um, you can't, you literally can't monitor that because kids will wake up at 3 in the morning and play from 3 in the morning until 7, and they'll look like they're getting out of bed. Um,
mm,
and they will fail out of school, and they will, the people in my business we should have all invested in drywall, because pulling a video game system away from a kid that's hooked, um, we're lucky if they put their fist to a drywall rather than go after physically their parents, which happens way too much,
mhm,
especially moms. These big teen boys like push, like you can't do that to your mom, and they wouldn't have except for they were video game addicted. It's just
mhm,
tragic. So I suggest, there are groups like Screen Strong who are going to say, like, let's do our best to not introduce video games. But if we do, there are steps that we can take to get these out of our home or minimize them. It's a process. The Screen Time Solution is a good book. There are ways that we can use to minimize this. Prevention works best.
mhm.
But what, we have to be prepared. It's going to get potentially a little bit worse before it gets better. Sometimes I suggest parents take a week long vacation, and we're mom and dad, or mom or whatever parent. I'm going to be less on my device. We're not bringing your devices. Wow, that was amazing. Yeah, wow, we had fun. We're coming back home. You know what? We're putting these away, and we're giving them
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
Uncle so and so to keep, and we're gonna live a different life from here going forward, because that worked. A lot of people within industry, that are funded by industry, try to convince parents that your kids find their life, the life that they need online. They have to connect with their peers online and strangers, which is a big fat lie for all of human history and what science tells us. If your kid's a child or a teen, their most powerful connection with, emotionally, needs to be with family. That's parents, siblings, extended family, or whatever we can find for them is their family. Usually caring adults, and the next most important caring or emotional connection should be school, including the caring educators there. It should not peers typically do not protect kids from depression and suicidality. Mom, these are the most important people for me. They keep me from being depressed. The next day, I just found all those friends blew me up. They're no longer my friend. They've ridiculed me. They're making fun of me at school.
Mhm.
They've blasted my image and all that I said around to the entire school. And I just cut myself, and I'm going to kill myself, and I'm going to end up in the hospital.
So you really need that family foundation or like that really, really tight knit relationship with a coach or a teacher or some sort of mentor, because like you're saying, the teen relationships are just so fickle. And like, I thought it was really fascinating in your book. You said that puberty in girls, it changes their focus so that they are seeking out friends and like that social type of set instead of their parents, because biologically at puberty, you're starting to look outside of your family for a mate. But you said that girls are hitting puberty almost 5 years earlier than they were in the 1800s. So now these girls are so much younger, trying to look outside of their family for friends and connections and influences. And then if you just put them on social media, and that's how they're trying to find those peer relationships instead of in person making friends, how is that affecting them when they're moving from the unconditional love of their families to this conditional love of online peers and strangers?
Exactly. And they don't just find their ways to social media. Social media knows that preteen girls, we call them preteens, but girls are hitting, your adolescence starts 2 years before your cycle does. So if girls are hitting their cycle at 10 and 11 today, they are hitting adolescence at 8 and 9 years of age. They are starting to push away unnaturally from the families that should care for them and love them and other caring adults to go seek attention. They are extraordinarily vulnerable. Social media industry knows that. But now since 1850, with our girls' adolescence happening sooner and sooner, they are biologically also extraordinarily vulnerable. And the industry is knowing that and going to exploit them.
So they're going through puberty a lot earlier, but they're still not getting their prefrontal cortex any earlier than before. So they still don't know how to navigate things rationally. So really, they just, you need to focus more on family relationships. And everyone says like, oh yeah, my kids are online because that's where their friends are. But would you say, well, then have their friends come over to play, have them make an actual relationship with friends?
Yes, friends are great. Real world relationships are where kids should live because they're not living in an environment that's trying to exploit and profit from them every single second. If you see your kids' friends and you see them trying to pull them away, oh, don't listen to your mom or dad, you're getting rid of that friend. I don't want you to spend time with so and so. They're trying to ruin your relationship with family. We see that in real life. Social media is trying to do that every single second with a little smile on its face. So our kids should live in the real world and have their relationships in the real world, and but always have family be the primary attachment and connection for kids at least through 18. And honestly, I tell kids, watch the NFL draft during COVID. Those guys are 22 years old, 300 pounds, best athletes in the world in the first round. And who are they sitting on a couch next to in their home? Their mom or their dad. That's the way it probably should be, definitely through 18.
Yeah. Well, speaking of these organizations that do not have our best interest at heart, I think so many parents are very lost on this. They don't know this because, like you said, all of this is being very carefully hidden from us. So we go to places like the American Psychological Association or the American Academy of Pediatrics. Those, in theory, have always been the gold standard. What should I do? What kind of guidelines should I have around screen time? Why is it that we actually cannot trust those organizations to guide us on screen time?
On the medical side, Cynthia, thanks for talking about this. On the medical side, unethically, they have a financial investment in putting kids before screens. This should never happen. You should not have child dietary guidelines funded by McDonald's and Coca-Cola. That would be laughable, ludicrous. We know it would be dangerous. That's exactly what's happening with medical organizations. The American Psychological Association, they have a dual relationship. They are a professional organization trying to place psychologists at Facebook, Instagram. They are trying to help and sort of profit off of that as an industry. That's what a professional organization does. They can then not be also a quote-unquote health organization that then supposedly judges kids' health-based effects of being on that social media because they can't literally speak the truth. And then what's really tragic is you see the head of the APA science group, Dr. Mitch Prinstein, say right at time the health advisory saying it doesn't really hurt or help kids, him saying, for my kids, I'm going to read the science in a different way, and my kids aren't coming anywhere near it.
So they're getting money from these organizations, or how is it actually happening? They have people advising them that are getting money from big tech?
For the APA is invested in putting psychologists to work as persuasive designers to manipulate kids' behavior. The overall job of Instagram is to pull kids away from the real world and to trap them in its virtual for-profit domain and follow them. That's how Instagram makes its money.
Okay.
And so the psychologists that work within in that industry, that's the overarching job of their job in my opinion. So if they're working for Instagram, they are part of pulling childhood away from the real world and putting it on Instagram. So the APA, who also then says, oh, we're a science-based organization, is hamstrung. They have this giant conflict of interest that they don't disclose a lot. They should say, we're also a professional organization putting psychologists within the social media industry. We actually can't make an ethical judgment about whether this causes health effects because we are financially invested in psychologists working there.
And then similarly, what are the conflicts of interest that are happening at Common Sense Media, which is a place that a lot of parents
Can I just throw out the American Academy of Pediatrics is worse than the APA. I believe their chief expert, quote unquote expert about kids and screens and social media is Dr. Moreno, who's received funding from Facebook, Instagram.
Wow.
You literally cannot do that. That's laughable.
Yeah.
It's tragic. It's dangerous. It's like dietary guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics being funded by the person that from McDonald's and Coca-Cola. We would know that would be ridiculous, but I call it the Silicon Valley exception. Oh, these consumer tech corporations really have your kids' best interests in mind. Of course they don't.
Right.
They have their founders and shareholders' best interests in mind.
And you pointed out in the book that the American Academy of Pediatrics had some very specific guidelines about how many hours a day and all that. And then those changed and became
this
way more nebulous after they started taking money from big tech.
This rogue group of industry-aligned, industry-funded people influence them. And it's tragic. I work with pediatricians every day. They are good people. By and large, they understand screen time is a problem. But here you have the American Academy of Pediatrics saying screen time really isn't that important. Their media group, their rogue, off-the-hook media group saying screen time is not that important. Meanwhile, you have actual scientists that are ethical within the American Academy of Pediatrics that put together worldwide guidelines, and they have worldwide experts saying that screen time is a risk factor for child obesity. You have competing recommendations within, and destructive and harmful competing recommendations within the American Academy of Pediatrics. You can't have that.
Yeah.
And then you said Common Sense Media, and so that I'm talking. There's the science-based side of the American Academy of Pediatrics and APA. And then there's these lot of groups that are what I call the Silicon Valley propaganda machine, and like Common Sense Media. And I'm sorry if your listeners, a lot of them have probably been told that Common Sense Media is where you go find the truth. And it used to be they were truthful, and they have done some good. But around 2012, they shifted. They've taken millions from Zuckerberg. Parents say, why are we getting fewer teachers? Why do I have a class size of 25 or 30 kids and my kids are supposed to learn in front of a screen when the actual science will tell us that where the rich kids, not like mine, go to school, it's 12 students and one teacher and a few screens. And that's what science says actually makes our kids learn. And you actually see Zuckerberg attended Phillips Exeter. Jim Steyer, the CEO and founder of Common Sense Media, he went to Phillips Exeter. 12 students sitting around a table with one teacher, typically without technology, learning in a caring school community that keeps them emotionally safe and learning, yet they are shoving screens in front of our kids.
Yeah.
And so Common Sense Media says that they're independent. That's a lie. They are paid. Their profit model is to put screens in front of your kid at home and school. And I expose that in my book.
Yeah,
it's tragic.
I mean, we've got to look to that of what are the children of tech executives doing? And I'm actually going to write an article about that on screenlessplaymore.com soon, because it is astounding how, as long as they've got the information and they've got the resources to do it, people are not setting their kids in front of screens. They're having them do real life things, and they're sending them, like you said, to private schools that have no screens and have lots of teachers and small classrooms. And I know we can't all do that, but we can limit screen time. We can tell our kids to go outside and play more, even if we don't have really expensive schools to send them to. But I think that
It's a matter of resources too. We shouldn't have Common Sense Media being an ed tech lobbying organization and making schools invest in lots of screens for your kids rather than reducing class size.
Yeah.
Like,
and then, I mean, some people think, oh, I'm being too much of a helicopter parent if I'm monitoring my kids' screen time and all of that. But would you say there's a big difference between constantly telling your kid, get off of that, stop climbing that tree, what are you doing, blah, blah, that type of helicopter parenting versus trying to actually monitor their screens and all this? Like, what would you tell parents to do of hands-on versus hands-off, and how it's different with technology versus real life?
That's great. And I would say persuasive design. Like Tristan Harris will say, persuasive design is really what's changed this. Today's consumer technologies have an agenda for your child. A ball, a bicycle does not have an agenda. It doesn't want to profit from your kid. It's just lying there. It's a tool. And liars, industry-funded people will tell us, oh, that consumer technologies are neutral. They're a tool. They're not. They have an agenda for your kid to change, to control their behavior. So that's why things are different. A helicopter parent is a person who does things for kids that kids should be able to do themselves. The tech elite, as I talk about in my book, completely understand, and those are tech execs, the top of the Silicon Valley propaganda machine, the very top of the health industry. They're all my kids. I'm protecting my kids. I understand that they have developmental vulnerabilities, whether they're kids or teens, and I'm not a helicopter parent. I'm a badass parent protecting my kids from an industry that's out to do them harm and trying to exploit them, because this is targeting their developmental vulnerability. So yeah, don't helicopter parent is somebody who writes an essay for your kid for them when they should have done that themselves, when they move into the college apartment and dormitory and handhold them and wake them up for class and bring them breakfast every morning. That's a helicopter parent. Somebody who is trying to guide their kids through an exploitive industry is not a helicopter parent.
And that actually perfectly brings me into the last question that I always ask everybody, because trying to not be helicopter parents and actually giving our kids the ability to create their own experiences and learn their own skills on their own, and have more independence. What is a memory, if you could share, of either your childhood or being a teen when you remember being allowed to do something totally on your own, either by yourself or with friends, and there were no parents around? And what was that?
That's a neat question. When I was 7 years old, I happened to break my leg because I was acting like an idiot on a diving board. Don't do that. Anyway, but they found I had a weak spot on my bone, so I couldn't play sports until I was a junior in high school. Okay. So, and I wanted to play football. So when I was going up to my junior year, I said, I've got to figure out how to get in shape and do this. And so I would leave my home late at night, and I would either go run, I'd be out at night, but I'd be running wind sprints by myself or with a friend on a field, or I would be going into a Stanford football stadium and at nighttime in the dark and running stairs. And at the top of that, I'm not a great athlete, so then being like winded and dizzy at the top, that's hard work. But that helped me. That's the opposite of B equals MAT. That is, it took a lot of work to get motivation, and I'd be motivated that I got to the top of the thing. Yeah. And it took a lot of effort. And I wasn't triggered to do that, except for just inside of me said, this is important to me.
Well, you were getting natural dopamine that was telling you to keep doing it. Yeah, for a teen to just leave their house and go running and doing stairs, that takes a ton of motivation. And it sounds like a fun memory of Stanford doing the stairs in the stadium at night. That's just kind of a cool visual.
It was cool until the good Stanford athletes showed up when I was there in the day, and I was used to running around by myself let's say at night and going, I'm good. And then you see a Stanford athlete do what they do. You're like,
inspiration.
That'll tell you to get back to academics and give up on any kind of thought that you're going to be kind of an athlete.
Well, thank you so much. I really want people to check out your book. It is called Better Than Real Life. There is so much more in there that we couldn't even talk about. I have just practically the whole book is yellow from my highlighting it and taking notes, because there's just even way more stuff than we talked about that is also very important and just delves into how this is happening and who do you trust and who do you not trust and what is going on here. So thank you very much for taking the time to illuminate us all.
Cynthia, I'm blessed to be here. You get your hands around. I mean, it took me years to get my hands around this. You seem to get your hands around it much easier than I did in many ways. I don't know.
It's because the book really, really does a great job of explaining it. And I feel like it's one of the few out there that is really shedding light on this, because we're all hearing in the ether that this is addictive, but we don't really know why. Or it's, because we don't know why, we think, is that really true? Come on. Are they actually engineering this? And your book is showing, yes, they absolutely are. And here is how they're doing it. And so, once we know what we're fighting against, we can fight against it a little bit better.
I so much appreciate that. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Screen Less, Play More podcast. If you like what you hear, please tell your friends, and please rate and review us on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen. That really helps other people find us and helps us get the word out. A special thanks to WJD, who does all of our IT, and Neil Penninger, who composed our theme music. Please also check out screenlessplaymore.com for research about kids and tech, some ideas on getting kids outside playing and away from screens, book recommendations, and so much more.